So let's talk about Constantine the Great, the first Christian emperor, the man who completely changed the path of Western civilization. But who was he really? Was he a true believer, a pious saint who genuinely saw the light? Or was he a brilliant political operator, a master schemer who saw this new faith as the perfect tool to consolidate his power? For centuries, that's been the debate, but what if the answer wasn't in some dusty old book, but buried under a small town in Italy, just waiting for someone to find it? Now, this quote here is from Douglas Boyne. He's the lead archaeologist behind a really stunning find in Italy. And look, when an archaeologist says something changes everything, you know it's a huge deal. It forces us to look right past the simple myths we've been told and stare into the messy, complicated, and way more fascinating reality of the past.
Okay, so what did they actually find? Well, in this small Italian city of Spello, not too far from Rome, Bourne and his team uncovered the foundations of a massive Roman temple. But here's the kicker. It wasn't just any temple. It dates directly to the time of Constantine himself.
And right away, that discovery creates this massive puzzle. Constantine is the guy famous for ending the persecution of Christians, for funding these huge grand churches. So why on earth would he give his official blessing to build a brand new pagan temple decades after he supposedly converted to Christianity? It just doesn't add up.
The answer to this whole riddle, it turns out, doesn't start in the 4th century. Nope, it starts with the archaeologists who followed a clue that was centuries old, leading them to a very specific patch of ground in Spello.
So the team found 3 enormous walls, the remains of a temple from the early 4th century. But the most incredible part isn't just what they found, it's how they found it. This was no lucky guess. They were basically following a historical treasure map, a letter written by Emperor Constantine that had been rediscovered way back in the 18th century.
And what this letter shows is this really fascinating negotiation. The people of Spello basically asked Constantine, hey, can we please skip this long mandatory trip to a religious festival? And Constantine said, sure, but on one condition. You have to build a temple in your own town, and you have to dedicate it to my family, my divine ancestors. So you have a permission slip from a Christian emperor for a pagan project. And that is the heart of our mystery.
To really get why a pagan temple is such a big deal, we have to rewind. We've got to go back to the very moment Constantine supposedly became a Christian in the first place, the legendary Battle of the Milvian Bridge. It's one of history's most epic stories, right? The year is 312. It's the eve of this huge battle for the control of Rome. Constantine looks up to the heavens for help. He sees a vision, a cross of light, and a promise of victory. Then, in a dream, he's told to put a Christian symbol on his soldiers' shields. They do it, they win the battle, and the course of history is changed forever.
Okay, but here's where that neat and tidy story starts to get a little messy. The earliest account we have, from a writer named Lactantius, is actually much simpler. He just mentions a dream where Constantine is told to mark the shields. The more famous version, the one with the blazing cross in the sky, that comes from the historian Eusebius, and it was written a quarter of a century later. It seems the legend got a bit of a glow-up over time.
This evolving story kind of hints that the reality was way more complex. So, let's just ask the question directly. What did Constantine actually believe?
To even begin to understand Constantine's world, you have to get this one concept: syncretism. The Romans were absolute masters at this. When they would encounter a new god, they didn't just reject it, they'd often just absorb it, blend it with one of their own. This idea of having only one exclusive faith was actually pretty foreign to them. One god could easily have many different faces.
And for Constantine, this military man totally obsessed with victory, the most important pagan god was Sol Invictus, the uncomparable sun. This was his patron god, his go-to guy, way before the Milvian Bridge ever happened.
And the evidence for this blended faith is, well, it's undeniable. For at least 12 years after the Milvian Bridge, Constantine's official coins continued to feature Sol Invictus. And get this, an even earlier version of his big vision story doesn't mention Christ at all. It says he saw the sun god Apollo, who promised him a long reign. So for Constantine, the super-powerful sun god and the god of the Christians might have just been two sides of the same divine coin.
So what about that temple in Spello? Well, it was dedicated to Constantine's ancestors, and this was part of a practice known as the imperial cult. This was a really old Roman tradition of treating emperors and their families like they were divine. It was a political act, it was a religious act, and it was 100% pagan.
So, okay, let's put the pieces together. We have this emperor who is publicly pushing Christianity forward, while at the same time he's engaging with pagan traditions like sun worship and the imperial cult. What was his game plan here? What was he trying to achieve?
Well, just look at his big moves. In 313, he legalizes Christianity. Smart. By 324, he's the sole ruler of the entire Roman Empire. A year later, he calls the Council of Nicaea to get the Christian church unified under one doctrine. And then in 330, he founds a whole new capital, Constantinople. Every single step was a calculated move, laying the foundation for a Christian empire. But, and this is crucial, he was building this new world right on top of the old one, not by demolishing it.
And this brings us right back to those temple walls in Spello. With all this context, they don't look like a contradiction anymore, do they? They look like a compromise.
And this really is the key takeaway. The temple isn't evidence of Constantine's hypocrisy. It's evidence of his pragmatism. It's actual physical proof that the switch from a pagan empire to a Christian one didn't happen overnight with the flip of a switch. It was a slow, messy, and negotiated process.
As archaeologist Douglas Boyne says, the discovery shows the staying power of the pagan traditions. Constantine understood he couldn't just erase centuries of belief. He had to negotiate. He built a new Christian future without completely burying the pagan past. He let old loyalties, like the imperial cult, exist right alongside the new faith.
You know, the Spella Temple is just a great reminder that history is never as simple as the legends we tell. It's a complex tapestry woven from belief and politics and compromise. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other truths about our past, what other monumental shifts in human history are still out there, just waiting to be discovered right beneath our feet?